Hello.
Hi there.
Guess who's got hosting duties? Hope you didn't turn in for Mips, because you're only going to hear him. You're not going to see him today. He's hiding in the corner.
The disembodied voice
in the corner.
Maps.
So when I'm looking this way, odds are I'm probably looking at Mips. But anyway, you have come to oh, hi. You have come to the What is Metal live stream, and I have dragged along kicking and screaming.
Oh yeah, it was real hard.
Yeah, you were like, I hate talking.
I'm very shy.
Pantheon, who is our writer, and had a pretty tremendous task to bring metal, which we're going to try to explain, to DCUO. Oh wait, the script says, just what is metal? We're here to get you up to date. And also, look, props. Always count on me to have props. Oh, I hope that wasn't loud. Oh wait, we're not using the table mic. Look at all these books that are available at your local comic book store. Also, digitally, if that's what you prefer, though I highly recommend your local comic book store. Okay, so this is, do you want me to give your full name?
You can do that.
Paul Benjamin. He is, like I said, he's the writer for DC Universe Online. We've actually done a couple panels together at New York Comic Con, Staple Expo, a few, maybe other things. We talk to students. We talk. So you have tuned in for a talking session. But we have lots of cool, you collected a bunch of images?
I did. I
So
put together a lot of images that were our inspiration from the books.
And I'm just going to give you the floor to let us, to share your background and your expertise and why you bring something special to DCUO.
Okay. Yeah, I've been writing comics and video games for a really long time. And I started, my first freelance gig was Wolverine Encyclopedia, which was so long ago that it was essentially a Wolverine Wikipedia page before there was Wikipedia. And I've written comics, I've written Hulk, Spider-Man, World of Warcraft, StarCraft, Star Trek, Muppets, Monsters, Inc., Disney princesses, a huge wide range of things. And video games, I did a Wolverine game, I worked on a Hulk game, I worked on Star Wars The Old Republic, although I was project manager on that.
Too.
Oh, hey!
But we did not work together, weirdly enough.
And the Marvel Universe, what was the Marvel Heroes Omega? And so I've done a ton of comics and video games, but my first love actually was DC Comics. I watched the Super Friends cartoon, and my brother told me about Martian Manhunter, who wasn't in the cartoon, but he was like, oh yeah, this guy, he's got all of Superman's powers, plus he can walk through walls and shapeshift and read people's minds, and my mind was blown. And he's green.
He's green.
And I was hooked. So I have always loved comics. I've always loved DC Comics, even though I've strangely done more work for Marvel until I came over to DC.
Ha ha ha, you're on mine now.
So my first work was on Justice League Dark, and now on the crazy thing that is metal.
Yeah, that was, I describe it as trippy. I think you've described it as wild. So we're going to try to tame it a little bit so you guys, because, you know, some folks, like you probably, are much more interested in the backstory of the comic tales that we're trying to bring to the game. You know, some people are more focused on the gameplay. Some people love both. I'm sure there's a lot of you guys watching right now too. So do we just want to get this rolling and go through some of the reference and the inspiration? Because that's really, you know, we go, okay, let's do metal. What does that mean? You know, well, that means we get these books and we start reading. And we start getting it, if we haven't read it, a lot of us just read comics generally, but we take what we think's best, we give them to the designers, the artists, everybody shares there's so many side books for metal too.
So many.
Don't you have like these are just the creators
This is a list of the creators, you can't even read it probably, but it's the whole page.
Yeah, it's
a
like
list of all of the
giant
creators.
list of, and my hand's covering it. Anyway.
And by the way, that's only the writers and artists.
Yeah,
not including the colorists, not including the letters and the editors
so
and all the other people who worked
it's a
on the
big
books.
thing. So I want to jump in because I'm going to go crazy if we don't get to start talking about this stuff soon. Shall we?
Let's go. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
What
are we doing now?
Are you waiting for a picture or?
Yeah, I say let's open it up. Let's show them that because Paul curated a lovely folder of reference for both story, art, and design. Every department gets really inspired when they look at these images, they read the books. It's like when I was reading Metal and I mentioned this on the last live stream, is I just would see things that Nightwing and the team were doing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like this was written for us to turn it into a video game. And so I get inspired that way.
I remember when you first came to me and you said, I want to do metal next, and here's why, and you gave me the Resistance. And the Resistance has the...
I gave you so much Resistance.
It has like the Gotham City is in these different rings, almost like the levels of hell in Dante's Inferno, and each one is controlled by a different supervillain who's warped reality. And when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, these are video game levels.
Do you have a couple pictures of the Gotham map or Gotham world in the comics, or the?
Do you have? Yeah, you have Resistance.
I have it in my hand.
And we also have all of these Dark Knights, right? These twisted, warped versions of Batman. And it's really interesting as a writer to get to come onto something like this because, first of all, it's a chance to write some of the most amazing, iconic characters, but also this was a chance to deal with a whole bunch of brand new ones who are only getting more and more popular in DC Comics. Mm-hmm. Oh, there's our Spire. So we looked to older books for reference for what the Spire would look like. So this is from, I think, a Grant Morrison storyline. Unless this is, no, this is actually from Metal. But there's this spire that was important in Infinite Crisis, I think. And we wanted to make that part of our world. And if you actually get rid of it, you can see the version of it in the game world.
Just Ben definitely took inspiration from that to create this. This is one of the coolest looking things we've ever seen in our game. When I saw it on the horizon as I first zoomed into that map, it just blew me away. And I watched him building it in his office, and it still just completely floored me when I actually had to run up to it.
And if you're like me and you get lost when you respawn and you're like, wait, where am I going? Mm-hmm. Do I turn left here? Do I turn right here? Having a giant spire on the horizon
I'm a lot
is
like you,
helpful.
as we learned since Oceans had to go through and put glowing mushrooms to help light the path since I kept getting lost. Odds are, if we get lost, there's players that are going to get lost too. I did want to, I had something here I wanted to show. It was straight out of, because we're going to talk about the final area a lot because that was a really important part of the Gotham Resistance storyline. The Poison Ivy and the Mr. Free stuff is lifted straight out of the books. I'm not sure if you have a digital image, but I'm going to try to grab this picture I just saw from Poison Ivy. That was Jack Frost's inspiration because he was in charge of that raid. Oh my gosh, I just had it and I lost it.
There's so much.
There's so much
We
metal,
do have,
you guys.
there is a Poison Ivy image, if you can pull that one up. There it is. I see her.
Yeah, that's a
her
great
with her
one.
plans.
Yeah.
Right, and so part of the idea of metal, actually, let's back up for just a second while you're looking for that image. So the idea behind metal is that there is a dark multiverse. There's this horrible set of worlds that are failed worlds that normally would get destroyed, and because of reasons, they are no longer being destroyed, and some of the beings from those worlds are coming into our world, and those include these Dark Knights, these evil versions of Batman.
Can you flip over to us real quick? I want to show them the cover of this one. This is the Road to Metal Dark Days, which is a very good read for that, to get an idea of how these failed worlds came to be and why they got jealous of our world because it didn't fail.
And so they come into our world, and their ringleader of the Dark Knights is the Batman who laughs.
Hey!
Boom! And he is essentially Batman who got exposed to the stuff that turned Joker into the Joker. So imagine all of the skills of Batman and the sick, twisted sense of humor of the Joker merged into one person.
Whoop. Hey, look.
So he's still Bruce Wayne, but he is absolutely terrible and horrible.
He's a bad dude. In fact, he's taken over as a major villain, major player in the comics these days. And he's got a very, I was going to say a bright future, but a very dark future.
And that's actually something that's really exciting about this is we'll have the first voiceover for all of these Dark Knights.
We have the absolute first voice for a lot of these characters. So DC was very involved in casting and getting us, because now if you've played our game, you're going to take that with you. That's who you hear now. They were excited.
So one of the things that the Batman Who Laughs does is he takes these metal cards that bend the laws of physics, and he gives them to some of Batman's rogues gallery and lets them reshape reality. So Poison Ivy, for example, goes and creates her ring of Gotham, where the plants have all taken over.
And the metal cards they show up a lot in our content, because it felt like a video game. Like he's like, here's your power up, and then the villains got more powerful. And that was also really important to the Merciless needs a forge to make powerful metal cards.
Well, so this is a really good example of where we get to do some fun stuff. So in the comics, the Batman Who Laughs just shows up and says, hey, here's these metal cards that bend the laws of physics. We don't know where they come from. In the comics, they never mention it. But in our content, we decided we wanted to do something with the Merciless in Olympus, and what a perfect opportunity. That's why he needs to go to Olympus, is he's using Hephaestus's forge and the shards of the Zeus's crown. So in Amazon Fury, we destroyed Zeus's crown in our universe. So now we could pick up that storyline and say, oh yeah, I remember that story? Well, we're taking these shards of the crown and we're collecting them, and the Merciless is forging them into these cards that can have these amazing magical effects. But not magic, bending physics. Very important in the comic.
Oh, check it out, check it out. There's Ice Golem, just like in the game. Oh yeah. I like that fight. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a really fun fight.
Oh, I guess this
would have been a
cooler picture.
There's in Mr. Freeze's realm, there's a lot of, in metal, little references to, well, I don't know if I should say the name of another property on our podcast, but they're talking about winter coming. And so we picked up a lot of those jokes.
It's so great is these are the books that we were passing around between art and design, and there's like people's notes are falling out of it. I'm like, you see this little tabby here, and there's a little cute bear. I can't even show it. Anyway, I gave those tabs to Oceans for Christmas, for holidays. So this is clearly a note. Let's see, what did she mark? Let's look at it. Why, it looks like Hal Jordan's appearance. I wonder what she was doing. Maybe constructing a secret area?
Can we talk about the secret area in the Batcave?
I mean, I just did.
Oh,
so
no.
Yes.
So,
I decided yes.
So that was another interesting thing, is in The Road to Metal, Hal Jordan shows up in the Batcave and hijinks ensue. And so we looked at our Batcave and said, hey, we're going to use our Batcave, but Hal goes to this secret area in the Batcave that is very important to the storyline of Metal and what Batman's been up to, because everybody's trying to figure out where Batman is and what he's been doing. And that gave us a chance to build this really cool separate secret area of the Batcave. So
we've been leading up to... Batman's been missing a pretty long time in the game, and I'm not, again, I try not to spoil too much, but we're going to find out this episode what happened and where he is. Mm-hmm. And it may not be the best news. I like to say it's a very Empire Strikes Back ending. Again, that's not RIP, but it's a, oh crap, kind of. Now tune in for part 2 when you have to save your own butt, is what I like to say. That's what I like to say.
Got a question here from chat.
We'll answer questions.
Backtracking a little bit, can you go through either like the reading order or what book you think is most pertinent for folks to read getting ready for our episode?
So I personally, I think the main Metal storyline is probably really important, but keep in mind we're only doing part 1 right now, so maybe the first half of the trade paperback. And also the Resistance. We pull a lot out of the Resistance for this storyline. The Road to Metal, there's some important stuff in there. But but we don't pull everything, right? There are bits and pieces. There's some references to Hawkman's journal as he's investigating this weird dark multiverse, kind of from a different direction. And also, I don't think we have a copy here. There's a Dark Knights Metal. It's called Dark Knights Rising. And Dark Knights Rising, it's actually really cool. Every issue is a different one of the Dark Knights. It's their origin stories. You get to see, how did Batman get infected with the Joker toxin? How did Batman get the powers of Flash? Hint, he strapped Flash to the hood of the Batmobile and drove into the Speed Force. That is how wild this story is.
I personally really recommend reading the preludes and the backstories, because to me that makes it so much more impactful when they show up in the game. It's not like you need it. Like, obviously he's going to explain who he is in 2 or 3 sentences that you wrote, and it's going to sound cool, and it's going to, either be really funny or really spooky. But having read all of that stuff, when I play it and they show up, I'm just like, oh my gosh, and I know what he's talking about, and I can relate to it, and I understand it. And I did also want to segue into, we don't necessarily tell the stories in the exact same order that the comics do, because sometimes things make more sense as a finale for an episode than another beat in the comics. And so you may see things, I'm not going to hold it for too long. You may see things, and I know you guys want to look at stuff for a long time, that
aren't going to show up yet.
Yeah, they may show up in the future, maybe later this year. Maybe not. You don't know. But when it happens, it just hits you right in the gut. You're like, oh my God, it's that moment. So I recommend, especially if you're the type of person who likes to listen to the collections, the briefings, the investigations, because you want to understand the broader implications of the story and the characters' backstories. Go for it. They're all still in print. They're really easy to find.
And there's a lot of little Easter eggs. If you, like me, love finding those little things, we populated them everywhere. So you'll see a thing like, there's a whole point in the story where they're searching for Batman, and Superman is trying to hear his heartbeat. And in the comics, Batman has a bunch of decoy heartbeats. Because he's Batman, right? He knows Superman can follow me by my heartbeat, so I'm going to put a bunch of decoys out there. And while that's not a big part of our storyline, there are items that will reference that kind of thing. So there's all these little Easter eggs peppered throughout all of the content.
Yeah, one of our goals is, you don't have to have read anything to enjoy the story, but we definitely like to just fill the yard with Easter eggs if you did. It always gives me quite the smile when I feel like I'm in on the joke.
Got another question here, kind of related.
Okay.
From Philosophy, with the different iterations of the Dark Knights, how do we go out deciding kind of which ones to look like? They have different looks kind of in the earlier books and the main book. A
lot of times they iterate on an idea. They see what resonates. Different comic book artists draw things differently too. I mean, look how different Batman himself can look by different artists. What helps me focus there's 2 things. One is, if I can get insider information from DC on which one they like the best, and they're gonna keep doing, which I just asked them about another character today, about her costume in the future, so that we make the right thing. And the second thing is, what would look the best in 3D space? Because that's one of the biggest challenges for our art team, is to converting, and Megzilla and Oceans talk about this a lot, so does Jayhawk, converting something from what looks cool in a sketch to what actually can become real in 3D is quite challenging. So sometimes we're just like, we're like, how would you sculpt that into a 3D thing? It just doesn't work. So the ones that look the best in a video game is also taken into consideration.
Yeah, and then in terms of writing it, it's looking at all the different versions and trying to figure out what is the core of that character, right? And that goes for other iconic characters too, right? Who is our Wonder Woman relative to all the different versions of Wonder Woman that we've seen? Our Hal Jordan is is our Hal Jordan, which is a little bit different than every other Hal Jordan that's out there. If you ever have the opportunity to professionally write for Damian Wayne, I highly recommend it. I wouldn't want to hang out with Damian, but God, is he hilarious.
Yeah, I only got to write like 3 lines because I made the team let me write 3 lines because I love him. Well, I hate him. That's why I love him.
Yeah.
He's such a jerk. There was a couple of his little snarky remarks in Judas Contract. I snuck in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of snark between him and Hal, right? Because Hal is so straight-laced.
I love that. Oh my god. I actually think you and the content designers did a wonderful job with him in this episode. Because he slides right in. We don't have to introduce him. You know, everybody knows who he is now, and so he just gets to be full on Damian and very judgy. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't care if you're a Green Lantern.
Yeah, no, he's better than everybody around him.
Oh, Damian.
Speaking of villains, or wait, I guess Damian isn't a villain.
Speaking of jerks.
Yeah, chat wants to know for both of you who your favorite of the Dark Knights, which one most interests you.
Oh.
Do you have a favorite?
I do have a favorite. For me, it is Red Death. I'm a big, longtime Flash fan. I love a few things about him. First of all, it is terrifying to imagine Batman with the powers of the Flash and evil. That is a nightmare. Oh, yeah. He's very interesting because he's Batman from his universe. His reasons for becoming Red Death make sense. I want to stop all the crime. I can't do that just as Batman, but if I were the fastest man alive, maybe I could. So his motives for doing it are almost pure, but of course he gets corrupted by this terrible power. Mm-hmm. But also he has Barry Allen's voice in the back of his head because he's now connected to the Speed Force, and Barry's soul, spirit, whatever, is still alive in the Speed Force, which is well established in the comics. And so the idea that Batman still has Barry Allen constantly haranguing him in his head, I think is great.
Yeah, I like the little callback to that you guys put into. I don't know if that was.
There's a little reference.
Was that a Pantheon special?
It was.
It was awesome. It was awesome. So he's also my favorite, but I'll tell you my second favorite. But I just love how metal his story is, of the strapped to the hood, kind of like he's a hood ornament kind of thing. My second favorite is. So we'll just sit here and talk about how great Red Death is. I really like, and this might be more because of what we did, but I really like the Merciless. He seems so not intimidated by anyone, not intimidated by Diana, which he should be, not intimidated by Ares, whom he stole power from in his own world to get the helmet. He's just like, all right, bring it. Oh, you brought 8 players with you? I don't care. Let's do this. And he do we have the drachma shot? He's like, don't worry, I brought my drachma. You're totally down, and the extra layer of story that you guys gave him, of what if that's where the metal came from in our universe? Because a lot of it is we very much tried to approach this as we're part of the multiverse. We are part of this metal story. We are not the exact same universe they are. And so what's different in our world? Well, the crown got destroyed. So that only amps up their powers even more when they collect the crown. Because that didn't happen in the comics. That only happened in our universe. And there's nth metal everywhere.
I've got some in my pocket right now.
Pull up. Yeah, right? I just got some. I was playing 5 minutes ago and I just got some. Do you have the Green Arrow picture?
Yeah.
Because in the comics, they laid that out as the most dramatic reveal. We gotta do I'm gonna do it with Ollie. Slow motion. It's in there somewhere. There it is. Yep. We're like, we know how to kill them. It's nth metal.
Oh my god, nth metal. That is the rarest thing in the DC universe. But not in the DC Universe Online universe.
We're like, oh, well, this ring's made of I got, here, have my artifacts. You're dead. So we're like, well, what would happen if the Dark Knights and the Batman Who Laughs came here? You'd think we'd beat them really easily, but no, they have their own plan of how to utilize that amount of metal and turn it against us. So our story's unique.
I feel like I should just chime in. There are a lot of people in chat who are big fans of Dawnbreaker.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I wish they could tell me why. I mean, you can tell me why and I can read it in a little bit.
Dawnbreaker is super cool. I sure hope we get to see more of Dawnbreaker
someday
at some point.
We're so clever.
Or even like, you know, like clothing inspired by him.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh well, you never know what the future holds.
We do.
I like this remark. Subtle. Yeah, I've never been called that in my life, so I know that was sarcasm.
Something else that was really interesting, actually, talking about the Merciless, is when we were writing him, the content designers and I, we were looking at a lot of our Batman VO that exists in the game and a lot of our Ares VO that exists in the game, and doing some interesting mixing and matching and combining of some of those lines when we did the Merciless, since he is Batman with the helmet of Ares.
I have thought that you just brought up something back when I used to write the game. I always thought it was really hard to write the new characters. Because their identities, their core of who they are, is hard. Because you're like, okay, this guy wrote it this way, this lady wrote it this way, but that's all I've got. So if you want to write about something that's never been, that character's never gone through, you kind of have to define it.
Yeah.
So doing metal, almost all of these characters are within the last 2 years. So it's exciting because you get to put your voice into it, but it's
I mean,
also
Batman Who
hard.
Laughs, right? How do you write Batman Who Laughs? We haven't seen that much of him, and we're seeing more and more of him now in the comics. But
Unfortunately, like a lot of these issues weren't even out when we started working on this and writing the script for the episodes. So we're learning as that would have been interesting.
You just have to imagine how would Batman sound, and he's not the Joker, right? He's not the Joker in a Batman costume. So how would Batman sound if he had that Joker sense of humor, but isn't actually the Joker himself?
Yeah, it's so weird. I think that's why he's really taken off for the DC brand, is just the way to combine both of those things into one. It's just totally creepy. I kind of hate it in a way. It kind of gives me the shivers as someone who has loved Batman since, like, as long as I can remember. I'm having a moment. He scares me. The key art is
He's
freaky.
terrifying.
He's super
Well,
scary.
and that's, by the way, a thing that's interesting. So Oracle does not currently exist in the DC Comics universe. She's sort of a past incarnation of Barbara Gordon in Rebirth. And so here we have our Oracle, and what's her take going to be on these Dark Knights? Because she's besties with Batman. So for Barbara to see these things, it has a very different effect on her, and we got to bring some of that out in a way that you won't see in the comic books.
That's true. Since she's, Batgirl in the comics right now, she's kind of in her own corner of this story where we have her front and center because she's your partner. She's guiding you through all of this. So yeah, we get a lot more like, what does Barbara Gordon think of this horrible mess? Especially, she's not very fond of the Joker.
Yeah.
So,
and if you ever play, for reasons. If you ever play through as heroes and villains, then you'll see some interesting. A lot of the lines for Calculator giving you missions, and a lot of the lines for Oracle giving you missions, they're very similar, but with a very Oracle or Calculator twist, and that was also a lot of fun.
Are there any good questions popping up?
Well, I don't know if you'll have answered this, but Trexlight asked about the voice actors. Do you happen to recall who's voicing?
I can tell you, and I think I saw this one a second ago, the Batman Who Laughs is voiced by Joey Hood, who also does the voice of Nightwing. And because we were like, we don't want it to sound exactly like Bruce. We didn't want any of them to sound exactly the same. We wanted it to almost be like a stranger, saying these words. But like he came in to do, we were like, could you just try? I want to hear what you sound like when you're really freaking terrifying. Because he also does a lot of cops, and he just has this really like stiff, heroic voice. And I'm like, what if you were insane? What does that sound like? And so he auditioned for the role, and we were like, ew, I hate it. It's perfect.
Yes.
And it was important that he wasn't overly processed, because we wanted to make sure he sounded like natural and like he's whispering in your ear. He's just totally gross. Anyway, so he won the part. Good for him. He's the first one to ever voice him, or at least as far as I know. Put it that way. I can't remember off the top of my head who had which
Yeah,
role.
I have a hard time remembering who was who, but I do know that on Red Death we did a little bit of a post-processing effect that sounds like Professor Zoom. right? That super speed, a little bit of a change to the voice, and that worked out really well. I don't think the Merciless is an Ares. The Merciless and Ares are different voices. We definitely didn't, because they are going to possibly be in the same place at the same time. We didn't want them to be the same actor. Also, I got to work with Susan Eisenberg for the first time. That was, let me tell you, a career highlight. Getting to work with the person who is the voice of Wonder Woman in my head, and who in real life is so excellent, like so good at her job, but also so gracious, and forcing me to give her feedback, right? Because I'm like, oh my God, right? So I can't just be a super fan, I have to be a professional. And she said, look, my job is to make the thing sound like what you want to hear. So tell me what you want to hear. Don't be afraid. And after the first few takes, Paul, do you have any notes? Paul, do you have any notes? Just trying to get me to
You're
open up.
awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
I feel like I'm sitting in the same room as Wonder Woman right now.
Yeah, a lot of these actors, it's like you lead into the mic. Yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll just keep rolling.
There's a question earlier, kind of wanting more information or more examples of why we picked metal in the first place. Like, what was it that grabbed you about metal? You mentioned their kind of video game moments, but do you remember any of those specifically? Like,
it's Gotham Resistance for me.
Yeah.
Because metal is all over it's all over the place. It's like Jack loves it because he's like, it moves as fast as his mind does. You know, because he's just a, you know, he's kind of quick thinker kind of dude. And
do we have the baby picture?
Oh, we do.
It's a very weird tale.
If you want to know how weird metal is.
It is this weird.
This is a thing that is not actually in the game, but
I saw it up there.
There it is.
Oh,
yes, Batman weaponizing Baby Darkseid.
Baby Darkseid. We chose to leave that out because it didn't really make sense in our tale of right where Darkseid is in his storyline in our universe. So, but it's so weird. But Gotham Resistance is very linear, very quest-driven. They have goals. They need to save the Titans, which we didn't do because we just did that. And I'm like, man, the Titans suck in our game, and we're constantly saving them.
No, we do. We have the metalized
Oh, that's
Titans.
true. But
So
it didn't want to be the point of our raid. It
Right,
didn't feel
no,
like a good
yeah, no.
focus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's we have sort of a metal virus that's spreading through the world, this pandemic of people getting turned into metal.
What's that a nod to?
Which is a nod to the Doomsday Batman. What the heck is his
Devastator?
name? Devastator, yeah. Devastator releases this virus that is turning, there's Lois Lane getting turned into a doomsday
Doom clone
creature,
kind of
basically.
thing.
And so we have that in our world where people are getting metalized, and so you will have to do some saving of the Titans. And big surprise, Damian is very snarky about the fact that the Titans have succumbed to this virus.
In the comics, he felt a little bad, but he's still like, but it's because they suck at the end of the day. And just that there's clear levels, like, in areas. Like, they had the ice area, the poison ivy area, and I just was like, if I don't get to play this, why am I even doing this? And it's a huge thing in the comics right now. Like in the comic publishing world, it's the top-selling books. It's what the fans of the books are really into right now. And while it's really great to do stuff like where we work Shazam into Justice League Dark, you know, getting those things from television and things that are popular in the films and stuff like that, and working on those, using that as a cultural touchstone, I mean, we wouldn't be here without the comics. So sometimes we go, well, what comic story haven't we done, or what's going on right now and what's really exciting? And they had just wrapped up the first part of Metal and then started working on the Batman Who Laughs stuff that's in the new collection. And so it was right at the perfect point where they were done with phase 1 and we could start production on the game, because it's incredibly difficult to work side by side with them because comics and video games take longer to make, frankly, as in like we can't just change things right at the end outside of like balancing and tuning and stuff like that, where there could, I'm so sorry, artists and writers, editorial can't, you know better than I do, can come back and be like, hey, we're going to change that, it's out next month. You know, like, we can't do that in video games. We'd be like, well, then we have to delay the whole episode. So we wait till they're pretty much done before we can jump on, and it was a perfect jumping on point for us. And it wouldn't fit in one episode, so we get two.
And I've worked in the comic book business for a long time, and comic book business, you're basically 1 degree of Kevin Bacon away from everybody else who works in the comic book business. So there are a lot of people who worked on these books that I know. And so for me, it's really exciting to get to put my spin on something that one of my friends did. That to me is really exciting and cool.
Did you tell that person?
I will once the episode comes out.
Okay. You're like, check this out.
Be like, hey, look what I did with your thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any particular cool, iconic beat from from our content that we wanted to go back and explain our inspiration from. I know that we went really into the searches on for Batman, a lot of the collections. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening in those?
Yeah. So a big part of it is that Nightwing and Damian have looked at all of Batman's research that he was doing before he vanished. And they figured out that he was looking for all of these sort of strange, exotic, rare metals that they think are the thing that will help defeat the Dark Knights. So there's a whole lot of, hey, we need to go here and get this artifact or these metals. We'll hear in the collections what some of the other heroes are doing in terms of where they're going and what they're looking for in the places that they're going. And that's also fun because, you know, we can't use every character that we want to use. There's only so much time to make voices and all of that. And so, hey, where is so-and-so? Well, here's where they are. And that's something I love. If you like to collect all the collections, you get a lot of that story.
Yeah, because it's a global event. It's a multiversal event. So like Batwoman's involved, but she's not in the content. She's off doing this other thing, and you find out, you get to listen in and hear what her mission. Ran out of breath. What her mission was. In the books, a lot of this revolves around this tale of these tribes of ancient peoples, the hawk, the bat, and this has a lot to do with Hawkman, which maybe you'll see something in the future more with that. But the point is, you did a whole collection around the journal of Hawkman because Batman found the journal in the books and was using it. Thank you. Was using it to essentially Hawkman's warning him like, don't follow me, Batman's so curious and has to know everything, he does it anyway. And so despite Hawkman not being present in this episode, you were able to work in that whole journal thing through the collections. And
in the case of the journal, I actually just took a lot of the VO verbatim out of the comics, right?
Yeah, sometimes
here's a great journal entry. This works. I don't need to change it. I don't need to tweak it. Scott Snyder's work is great. Boom, put it in there. We also, one of the things that I remember sticking out to me from, I think it was, it's Resistance again. You can see there Killer Croc and Harley was the fact that there were a lot of villains involved in the story, the villains working with the heroes, and that's something we do a lot of in DCUO. So having this premise that allows the heroes and villains to work together, and even to have villains as quest givers, that was really fun. I wanted to give all our villain players something really cool and fun to do.
I love Croc as a
Croc is
quest
so
giver.
great.
He's like, can't eat metal people. I'm like, oh, honey. Well, I'll help you out then.
Do you look at some screenshots of what we did?
Oh, yeah. In case you haven't been on the test server or watched videos of people on the test server, we do have a couple pictures to show, but all of this will be going live next week. And you will get to experience it for yourself. That's the big finale area. We talked about that a little bit earlier, the big spire, which to me just looks like I just assume that a terrible villain lives inside there. It just feels like it.
Yeah, it's kind of Saruman's Dark Tower.
Yeah, I love it so much. I think we have a base item that shows
Sauron,
that.
Not Saruman.
You ruined it!
I did.
There's our Merciless, as I was talking about. He is intimidated by no one, and he's got the God Killer blade, I think.
Guess what God Killer does?
I don't know.
Ares doesn't like it.
Oh, okay. He's like avoiding it the whole time.
Yeah,
He's like, you heroes and villains, you go do the thing. I'll stand back here.
But what a great excuse. We want the heroes, we want the players to do all the work, right? We don't want Ares to go solve your problems for you. Perfect.
And then we got apparently our favorite.
I like that, Mercury Communications.
Yeah. You think faster than this scroll.
Yes, clearly it scrolls. I always think it's Max Mercury's company, but he's not in. Is it Max Mercury anywhere in DCUO? Maybe
Not
he is.
really.
No?
Just in the stuff like that. Oh, that's a nice shot.
That is a nice shot.
Who did that? Well done. Probably our creative services team. But
Actually, I grabbed this
you did
from a video.
from a. Oh,
But,
yeah.
yeah.
She looks like she's about to lay one on him. Oh, he's so gross. I love and hate the Joker, and I love and hate the Batman Who Laughs in a whole nother level. Oh, look at that tech guy. I was gonna say a joke. I won't do it. Somebody's about to stomp and punch that rock into the back of him. I assure you, this is not from us playing. This is. Oh.
Oh,
I'm so glad.
right.
Worth noting, we have a new Nightwing model.
Yeah. He's so handsome. Got any shots of the other side? That's really important for Nightwing.
Stop it.
You know, it's funny. So I was talking about people I'm friends with. Nightwing was created during Marv Wolfman's run on Titans. And Marv was somebody I was a fan of him growing up, and then I became
Same.
friends with him years later.
I did not become friends, even though he did work on the game.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I bet you Marv did not know that Nightwing is...
We're mortal enemies. No, I'm kidding. He's amazing. I adore him.
I'll bet you Marv never thought, you know what's going to be really important? Nightwing's butt.
When he made that character. I don't know. It is the stuff of legends these days. I may have told this story before, but I do have, for my sister's birthday, got her through an acquaintance. He was very kind, and he got George Perez to draw Nightwing in the OG disco collar and signed it to my sister. And it's like framed on her wall. And I'm like, well, I'm just not going to give you birthday presents anymore because I can't beat that. But we love Nightwing around here, so he finally got a glam up. It was just sad seeing him next to Damien.
Yeah, like, Damien looks so good.
And Nightwing was like, you're getting a little old there, Nightwing.
old and busted.
So he looks great. I love his shoes. They're so great. Unfortunately, I can't wear them. They're too big. But we didn't make shoes.
I could never fill his shoes.
No one could.
No,
Damien's like, I can. In fact, these shoes are dumb.
I redesigned them. They're better now.
Yeah, these are much better shoes. Father would be proud.
Oh yeah, here we go.
The ice wall. I love this map. It is such a wonderful reimagining of a truly jacked up Gotham area. Wild.
Trippy.
And trippy. Dude, it's so trippy. And there's the storm, which
Oh yeah.
was inspired by the Red
inspiration.
Death origin story. He did that. I think he did it in Gotham in the books, but we didn't want the whole Gotham open world to be like that, so we did a little nod.
But he creates these lightning storms of dark multiverse speed force. And actually, there's at one point, I think it's still in there, you'll see people get transformed into metal, and you'll see this blur because it's Red Death like running over, doing it, and then running away, and it looks really cool. Yeah, Flash Museum. Again, being a big long-time Flash fan, getting to do some stuff with Flash and the Flash Museum. We only get a glimpse of Flash. He's not doing well.
We only get a glimpse of Flash.
He's not having a good time against the Red Death.
No, I love that scene. Which I was watching somebody play it, and somebody was watching it with me, and they saw when you help Barry at the end of it.
Yeah.
What happens? They were like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, he's okay. He's just sleeping. He needs to rest. He's fine.
Yeah, he gets tired.
He truly does, and he needs like 42 hamburgers and he needs some big belly burgers right away.
That was our Hawk Tribe stuff.
Every time I'm going to say something, I try to remember if it was in part 1 or if it's coming in part 2, so I don't just completely spoil the entire second episode. Not that anybody would mind, except Meps might just
I mean,
leap out of the corner.
Well,
Yeah,
no.
we don't want to spoil all the stuff about Hawk people.
Will we see the Metal Men?
Oh.
I've gone rogue. I'm reading questions on my own.
We will see the Metal Mimes.
Oh, those mimes. Everybody loves a good mime.
I would love to get to write the Metal Men. That would be amazing. One of my favorite Metal Men appearances was in Batman Brave and the Bold, when Batman, in his undercover identity as Matches Malone, is doing a deal with Kanjar Row on an alien planet, and Kirscher's sudden but inevitable betrayal, right? Kanjar Row turns on him, and it turns out that Batman's like clothes, like his boots and his briefcase, all of his gear are Metal Men shape-shifted into stuff that he's wearing, and so suddenly he's got the Metal Men at his side.
Brave and Bold just didn't get enough credit. I love that show. They have the best animated Birds of Prey story. That song.
That show, it's actually a good example of metal in the sense that you're watching it and you're saying, wait a second, am I watching Batman on a plane made out of Plastic Man fighting drones flown by super intelligent gorillas? Like, is this all happening right now?
Well, since you mentioned it, I gotta ask from Chad: is Plastic Man a thing we want to do?
Oh, the plastic egg.
Just answer truthfully.
It's not there right now. No. It's one of those things. It's like Baby Darkseid almost.
It's to me, Plastic Man being in an egg form in the comics is this leftover thing from a story before that, right? Mm-hmm. And so it didn't make sense. He's not really in the book, right? He's important later on in the story, but he's not really a presence. So to me, story-wise, it felt like you'd be bringing him in for no reason, because Plastic Man is a detective, right? He's a former criminal turned superhero who has a detective agency. It feels kind of weird to bring him in this big cosmic thing, even if he did play an important role in it in the comics.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And same with like you kind of did want to do Baby Darkseid a little bit, but we're like, it doesn't. It would feel forced.
Yeah,
because we didn't get that story yet in our universe, so it just would be like, and for some reason, Baby Darkseid. You're like, why? And the players are like, why? And we're like, I don't know, because. I kind of have the same feeling about Plas. Why? And then we haven't done him. I'd hate to introduce Plas through. Oh, there's an egg over there. Right. Though I kind of do want to do that.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you what I would love to do is, if we were going to use him, is do, and I'm not spoiling anything, I'm just saying a thing I would like to do. The Event Leviathan story that's happening right now, one of the cool things is they have all of the world's greatest detectives. So they've got Batman and Plastic Man and Nightwing and Lois Lane.
I love it.
All working together to try to solve crimes.
I got a little passionate there.
Yeah, questions.
I am a big Lois Lane fan, so seeing her get that treatment of being on par with the other great detectives, because she's the greatest investigative journalist of all time. I'm gonna die on that hill.
No, she has the Pulitzers to show it.
So getting to see her be a part of the action again, and like I love the old Max Fleischer cartoons, because she was very powerful originally. She always has been really strong, and I used to send this gif around the office of like, the goons are coming, and she just takes one of the machine guns from the. In fact, we actually did that in the game. There's one scene where she just goes to one of the weapons locker and just starts alongside the player. Anyway. I digress. Lois is awesome, and I love that detective story.
Yeah, I would love to do a big detective story with Plas.
Detective?
And Elongated Man together. I mean, if we're going to build Plastic Man.
Yeah, I mean, because we don't really have the tech to do that. So if we did, we would certainly want to double down and do both of them.
Chat does point out that Lois couldn't figure out the glasses thing for Superman. So.
There's like many like blogs, like papers, like I think people have like done like dissertations on how and why she couldn't.
Besides
so I'm not
super
gonna,
hypnosis.
That's one of them. Yeah, so I'm not going to defend it. Some people say she knew, but anyway.
Yeah, I'll let Clark tell me in his own time.
That's what I think Lynn is doing, or did. And then when she anyway, I'm going to get into that. Maybe next year. But
Chet is also upset about the spoiler that Clark is Superman. So.
You know, that's an interesting thing that coming in as a narrative designer on this game, writing dialogue so that people aren't constantly exposing your secret identity in front of the villain players.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are scenes where, in my mind, I mean, when I think of Superman, I always think of Clark. In my mind, I never say Superman. I'm always like, oh, Clark does blah, blah, blah. Whereas Batman, I always say Bruce does blah, blah, blah. Hal is Hal. Flash is Barry, depending on which Flash it is, or it's Wally or whoever. But, you know, writing VO so that when I say, well, Superman, we better go do this thing. Because it feels like even with Green Lantern especially, it feels like maybe sometimes people slip up and say Hal, and that's kind of okay, because everybody not on Earth knows.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody not on Earth, there are a lot of Green Lanterns.
That's
Which Green
one that
Lantern do you mean? Hal Jordan. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of this is driven by the IP. They don't want their identities exposed to the public and, you know, or just randos in their opinion. So we have to, who is it okay to say? Like John Johns, it's okay. Hal Jordan is okay. John Stewart was okay. Like they're saying, because like they're not like super secret. Whereas like Batman, no.
Yeah, you never want to say Bruce in front of, and it's crazy in its own way because our heroes at this point, frankly, are as powerful as all of these other characters, right? So your player at max level is. If they were in the comics, they would absolutely be a member of the Justice League or the Crime Syndicate, right? Like, they're huge.
And we technically are. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you hit level 30, you join the society.
You would think in the comics, your character that you play as a player probably does know that.
Well, you might not be in the inner chamber like they have, there's you know, the senior staff, I guess.
Right.
You know, like Black Canary and John Johns and. So that is, it is awkward to get those really like dramatic moments, like when let's say you know, Wonder Woman sees, you know, Batman hanging off a cliff and she would be like, Bruce! We have to be like, Batman! In fact, we did that in the Superman, in the Death of Superman thing we did where Lois runs up because Superman fell on the ground, Doomsday killed him, and we have her run up and she's like, Superman! Because she doesn't want to expose his secret identity even in that moment. It was actually really funny, dark and sad, but also funny to have her read it that way. Superman!
Sharon in chat is reminding you that you have a Metal Part 2 meeting right now. So a couple more questions, and I guess we'll wrap this up.
You guys can get started without me. I'll catch up.
There was a question. We have so much nth metal in the game, right? That's a big difference.
Yes.
From us to the comics. In the comics, they introduced 10th metal and other metals. I guess. Are we doing anything? Do we consider doing anything like that? Adding new metals?
We did.
We've talked about it. As you just heard, we're still planning Metal Part 2. So there may be some references. There's definitely, in Part 1, there's definitely some references to the Amazonian vambraces and Wonder Woman's tiara specifically being made out of 8th metal, which is a thing that came up in Metal for the first time, naming those as 8th metal. Presumably that's what Zeus's crown was made out of, or some alloy of that. So yes, there are some references to that kind of thing that came out of Metal. Whether or not you're going to have it, I think is TBD.
Yeah, I'm like, we've been very careful to not cause a whole lot of confusion. Like, we don't want you to think you're supposed to stick something in an artifact when you're not supposed to. So we that's another thing about fun video game design is trying not to confuse you when you're playing the game. And so we've been very cautious on how we've approached adding metal to the game. So.
Last question. How much direct input do do we get from DC in terms of how we adapt this kind of story? Like, how much freedom do you have? Is it mostly up to us? How involved?
I mean, they're very involved in the sense that I have a weekly call with them, and I usually tell them, here's what we're thinking, here's how we'd adapt it. You know, and it usually starts with, as you know, Darkseid's not a baby in our universe, so we're probably not going to do that. You know, like I told them, Amazon Fury was a very important original story to our game. We would like to use the Merciless to tie that in to the metal cards, and usually they're really excited because, you know, Multiverse is such a big important part of this storyline and of the brand, because they've got the CW, they've got the Crisis and all of that stuff. And so when we can make it unique but still like have the heartbeat of the story that they're telling, they love it. And this is going to sound really, really sappy, they love the players, they love you guys having your own universe and your own storyline. And so when I explained to them that, like, this was like when we do touchstones to Origin Crisis, stuff that only ever happened in our universe, and I'm like, that was really important to our players. So seeing that as a callback is meaningful to them. It makes them really happy. So there's usually there's no resistance. It's just us trying to combine it into something really interesting, but, you know, still having the same spirit of the original.
Yeah, it's very collaborative. I never feel like they're getting in my way. They're only adding. Oh, hey, what if we name this artifact after this awesome storyline, right? That just came up today. Or you know, we can ask them important questions like, hey, we're about to go do the first voiceover ever for the Batman Who Laughs, who works for Barbatos. How do you say Barbatos? Barbatos?
We'll get both just in case. But it's a very special and really wonderful partnership that we have with them. In fact, I just got back from flying out to Burbank and talking with them, and already have ideas for what's going to happen after Metal. I'm we're very excited about it. Can't say what it is at all, but it's very, very cool. Anything else?
That's it.
Apparently I'm late to a meeting. So, par for the course. And now I'm going to go collapse on the floor and let them do work around me.
I want to just say a quick thank you to everybody. It's super exciting for me to get to come in and be a part of this project and write these characters that I've loved for so long. So I hope you all enjoy the story and dig it. That's why I do this. I just want to give everybody awesome versions of these characters that I loved and still love.
I was going to say, what happened? Did we make you hate them?
Well, I loved them growing up, and
Yes.
so that was my career goal for my life. And that's what I do.
Thanks, everybody. I know it was a little bit of a winding journey through Metal, so it was as scattered as the actual story. But, you know, let us know what you think. And, you know, we don't always need to do something like this, but if you guys enjoy it, maybe we could do it more often.
Yeah, so let us know.
Let
For
us
sure.
know. Right. Say bye now?
Yep.
Bye now.
Bye now.